The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. Have you ever felt that something in the atmosphere had shifted, so subtly that you couldn't explain it in words, but so profoundly that your spirit recognized it before your mind did? Relationships are built on trust, yet human behavior often reveals truths that words try to conceal. Today we explore 6 hidden signs that may indicate she has just been with another man. Not to provoke fear but to awaken clarity. Because awareness is the first step toward freedom. 1. The silence between words. Sometimes it's not what she says, it's what she doesn't say. There's a weight that lives inside silence. A pause, a hesitation, a breath held too long. When you speak to her and she avoids your gaze, the room itself feels different. Her pauses become heavier than her sentences, as though each unspoken word carries 1,000 unexpressed truths. And you, standing there listening, begin to sense that the conversation is not about what reaches your ears, but about what lingers unspoken in the spaces between. Khalil Gibran once wrote, "Between what is said and not meant and what is meant and not said, most of love is lost." Think about that for a moment. How much of your relationship, of your connection, has been shaped not by declarations of love, but by the silences that hung after arguments, the words swallowed when they should have been confessed, the long pauses when trust cracked but no one dared to name it. Silence can be a sanctuary, a place of safety, a quiet garden where 2 people rest together in peace. But silence can also be a veil. Behind it, guilt can hide, shame can breathe, and secrets can grow like shadows stretching in the night. Have you ever noticed how silence changes its shape? There's the silence of comfort, when she lies next to you, breathing steadily, no words needed because presence is enough. Then there's the silence of withdrawal, the kind that feels like a wall has been erected, invisible but impenetrable. And then there's the silence of concealment, when every word withheld feels like a shield protecting a truth you're not meant to discover. But the question is, do you listen only to her words or do you hear the quiet spaces her words are trying to cover? Think about the last time she answered you quickly, almost too quickly, her voice firm but her eyes darting elsewhere. Think about the way she sometimes lets her voice trail off mid-sentence, as though she's afraid that finishing it might expose something deeper. That's the language of silence. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It simply is. And yet, if you are still enough, attentive enough, you can hear it louder than anything spoken. Silence is not absence. It is communication, just not the kind most people are trained to recognize. In psychology, it's often said that nonverbal communication makes up the majority of human interaction. What does that mean? It means silence is never empty. It's filled with microgestures, with subtle changes in tone, with the energy of what remains unexpressed. Now ask yourself, why would someone choose silence instead of words? Sometimes it's fear. Fear that speaking the truth would shatter the image you hold of them. Sometimes it's guilt, because words feel dangerous when they risk betraying an action taken in secrecy. And sometimes, it's simply because the weight of the truth is too heavy to carry out into the open. Imagine this, she's sitting across from you. You ask her a simple question, where she was, who she was with. The answer comes, clear and rehearsed. But then a pause. Her hands fidget with the edge of her sleeve. Her eyes don't quite meet yours. That pause is not empty. That silence is not meaningless. It's a world in itself, filled with tension, hesitation, perhaps even regret. But here's the deeper question. How much do you trust yourself to interpret silence? Do you dismiss it, convincing yourself you're imagining things? Or do you lean into it, allowing your intuition to guide you? Because intuition is often born in silence, in those spaces where logic can't reach but your spirit still feels. Silence is a true friend who never betrays. Confucius. But what happens when silence is not a friend, but an accomplice to betrayal? This is where the introspection begins. Are you brave enough to sit with the silence, to listen to it, to let it speak its untranslatable truths? Or are you so afraid of what you might discover that you cover it with distractions, excuses, or forced conversations? Let's be honest. Many people fear silence because silence forces them to confront themselves. When there are no words, the mind begins to wander. And when your mind wanders, it often leads you to the places you've been avoiding. What if her silence is not about her, but about you? What if her quietness reflects the things you've ignored, the lack of intimacy, the cracks in communication, the distance that has quietly been growing between you? But equally, silence can be a mirror. If you dare to look into it, it reflects both her hidden truths and your own. It may reveal not just what she is hiding, but also what you've chosen not to see. So, let me ask you again, do you listen only to her words or do you hear the quiet spaces her words are trying to cover? Because in those spaces, truth whispers. It whispers in the hesitation, in the stillness, in the pause before she answers. And sometimes whispers say more than shouts ever could. 2. The body speaks before the mouth. The body never lies. Words can be crafted, rehearsed, carefully constructed to mislead. But the body? The body speaks a language older than speech itself, a language coded in nerves, muscles, and reflexes we cannot control. When someone carries a secret, it doesn't stay confined to the mind. It leaks. It escapes through posture, gestures, tone, and movement. This is why psychologists often say, if you want to know the truth, don't just listen to the mouth, watch the body. Changes in posture are often the first sign. A woman who is usually relaxed in your presence may suddenly appear rigid, as if every muscle is holding tension. Her shoulders lift higher. Her spine stiffens. She crosses her arms more often, not because she's cold, but because she feels exposed. On the surface she may laugh, smile, or act as if everything is normal. But underneath, her body is bracing itself. Bracing against your gaze, bracing against discovery. Restlessness is another sign. Small, repetitive movements, the kind most people don't even notice in themselves. Tapping fingers against the table. Crossing and uncrossing legs. Shifting weight from one foot to the other. When guilt or nervousness builds, the body searches for an outlet. These restless movements are the nervous system's attempt to discharge tension. And though she may not realize it, every flick of the hand, every shift in her chair is a confession written in motion. Then there's sudden self-consciousness. A need to adjust clothes unnecessarily. Fixing her hair again and again. Touching her necklace or pulling at her sleeves. These aren't random habits. They're micro-rituals of self-soothing. The human body does this instinctively when it feels watched or judged. It's as if, by adjusting the surface, one could calm the storm beneath. And then, perhaps the most revealing of all, avoidance of intimacy. You reach for her hand, and she hesitates a fraction too long before returning the gesture. You lean in for a kiss and her lips touch yours, but without depth, without warmth. The physical connection that once flowed freely now feels interrupted, restrained. When the body withdraws from closeness, it's often because closeness has become complicated, burdened by guilt or the memory of another's touch. Psychologists remind us of something profound. Micro-expressions never lie. These are fleeting facial expressions, flashes of fear, contempt, or sadness, that appear for just a fraction of a second before the conscious brain masks them with a smile or neutral look. If you've ever caught a glimpse of something strange in her eyes, something that disappears almost as quickly as it arrives, you may have witnessed one of these micro-expressions. They are the fingerprints of the subconscious. Think about it. When was the last time you truly observed her face? Not just the way it looks when she's posing for a picture or smiling for you, but the fleeting shadows that cross it when she thinks no one is watching. The twitch of a lip, the narrowing of an eye, the sudden downward glance. These are the body's whispers. And unlike words, they don't come with filters. The science of nonverbal communication has shown that over 70% of our communication is nonverbal. That means the majority of what she communicates with you happens without her speaking a word. Her breathing, her gestures, her pacing, all of it tells a story. The question is, are you paying attention to that story, or are you letting her words distract you from it? Consider this. When she speaks, her tone of voice might sound convincing, but if her arms are crossed tightly, her feet angled away from you, and her eyes darting toward the floor, which version do you believe, the words or the body? Logic tells us to trust language, but instincts tell us to trust movement. And instincts, more often than not, are right. There is also something known as duping delight, a subtle smile that appears when someone thinks they've successfully deceived another. It doesn't last long, but it's there. If you notice her smiling in moments where there's nothing to smile about, it might not be happiness. It might be the unconscious pride of concealment. And let's not forget distance. Not just emotional distance, but physical. The way she sits further from you than usual. The way her hugs feel shorter. The way she angles her body ever so slightly away during conversation. These are not accidents. The body seeks alignment with truth. When truth is fractured, alignment breaks too. So, the question becomes, are you merely hearing her words, or are you studying her movements? Are you relying on what she says, or are you paying attention to what her body insists on revealing? Because every gesture, every pause, every unconscious adjustment is data. It's evidence. It's the body crying out in a language it cannot mute. The only question is whether you are fluent enough to understand it. 3. The shifting energy. Energy cannot be faked. When two bodies connect, they exchange more than flesh. They exchange presence, rhythm, vibration. You may not always see it, but you feel it, the way you feel sunlight on your skin or the way you sense a storm before the first drop of rain. Every touch, every embrace leaves behind a residue, an imprint that lingers long after the moment is gone. If she comes back with an aura that feels foreign, almost borrowed, it could be the residue of someone else's touch. And this, more than any word or gesture, is what awakens your intuition. You can feel the energy of someone even in silence. Close your eyes. Feel, don't think. Let your mind step aside for a moment. What does her presence tell you beyond words, beyond gestures? When she walks into the room, does the atmosphere shift? Does something in you tighten as if bracing? Or does something in you soften as if welcoming a light? Energy is the invisible thread of human connection. Lovers often know each other not by the words exchanged, but by the pulse of presence, the way their breaths align, the way silence feels alive between them. When that energy changes, when it becomes inconsistent, colder, or strangely restless, you notice, even if you don't want to admit it. The truth is, the body can lie, the mouth can lie, but energy, never. Energy carries memory. It carries the vibration of touch, the intensity of desire, the softness of tenderness. It carries what has been lived, even if no one speaks of it. When she returns to you and her energy feels shifted, it is because she has shared that frequency with another. This isn't about paranoia. It isn't about suspicion. It's about attunement. Have you ever walked into a room after an argument had taken place, and even without knowing what was said, you could feel the heaviness in the air? That's the imprint of energy. It's the same with people. When someone carries another's essence, it clings to them like perfume, subtle but undeniable. Energy speaks in ways words never could. You feel it in her touch. Perhaps her embrace feels distracted, as if her arms are with you but her spirit is elsewhere. You feel it in her kiss, when the passion is mechanical, as though she's replaying an old ritual without its soul. You feel it in her gaze, when her eyes meet yours but the depth behind them has shifted, like a room you once knew that has been rearranged without your permission. Some call this intuition. Some call it the sixth sense. But what it truly is presence. Your being is wired to detect harmony and disharmony. When the energy between you and her is no longer synchronized, your spirit knows. It knows before your mind catches up. It knows before evidence arrives. The energy you feel is real. Trust it. Close your eyes right now. Picture her standing beside you. Strip away her words, strip away her actions. Just feel her. What radiates from her? Warmth? Openness? Or does something feel closed, tense, shielded? Your spirit is speaking to you in whispers, but are you listening? Because energy cannot be hidden. It seeps through the smallest gestures, the pauses in conversation, the way someone lingers or rushes away. It lives in the rhythm of their breathing, the pace of their footsteps, the way they occupy space around you. When that rhythm changes, when the song you once shared becomes out of tune, you feel it, not in your head but in your chest. There's a reason ancient philosophy spoke of energy as life force. Chi, prana, spirit. These are not abstract ideas. They are lived experiences. When two people join, they merge not only physically but spiritually. And that merging leaves an impression, like fingerprints on the soul. When she carries someone else's touch within her, her aura is no longer the same. Have you felt it? That sudden sense of disconnection, when someone you love feels both near and impossibly far at the same time. When the room is filled with their presence, but something essential about them is absent. That is not imagination. That is your spirit detecting the dissonance. The poet Rumi once said, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul, even if the winds of change take away the leaves of your comfort." Perhaps what you are feeling is exactly that, the wind of change carrying with it a presence that does not belong to you. So I ask you, are you paying attention to the shift in energy, or are you silencing the very intuition designed to protect you? Are you allowing the foreign aura to pass unnoticed, pretending it doesn't matter? Or are you brave enough to feel what is truly there even if it hurts? Because ultimately, the truth is not always in the words she speaks, nor in the smile she wears, nor even in the gestures she makes. The truth lives in the energy she carries. And that energy will always tell the story, whether she chooses to or not. For the subtle contradictions. Inconsistencies are the fingerprints of deceit. A story told twice should sound the same twice. But if the details shift, if timelines blur, if her explanations feel rehearsed yet fragile, pay attention. Truth has weight, solidity. Lies, by contrast, are brittle. They fracture under repetition. The philosopher Aristotle once warned, "The least deviation from truth will be multiplied later." In other words, even the smallest distortion eventually unravels into contradiction. Lies are rarely born whole. They are patched together, piece by piece, in response to suspicion. Each patch creates new inconsistencies like cracks spreading across glass. Imagine this. You ask her where she was last night. She tells you she was out with friends. Simple, straightforward. But later, when you mention it again, the details have shifted. First it was dinner at a restaurant, then it was drinks at someone's house. First she said she came home around 11, later she corrects herself, it was closer to midnight. Each change may appear minor, almost meaningless. But stacked together, they form a pattern, a labyrinth of contradictions. And that is the essence of deceit. It creates labyrinths where the truth should be a straight line. Ask yourself, is her narrative a line, or is it a labyrinth? The rational mind thrives on consistency. This is why in courts of law, testimony is tested through cross-examination. The truth can be repeated without fear. Lies, however, struggle under scrutiny. They require memory, rehearsal, and improvisation. And the human mind is not built to juggle fabrications for long. Eventually the cracks appear. Think about the tone in which she explains herself. Is it calm, steady, confident? Or does it feel scripted, as if she's rehearsed the words in her head before delivering them? Often, liars lace their stories with unnecessary details, overcompensating as if precision alone could compensate for a lack of truth. I was at the cafe at exactly 9:47, sitting at the second table near the window. Why such precision? Because the guilty believe that precision equals credibility. But ironically, the very excess of detail reveals insecurity. Another clue lies in timing. When asked a simple question, the truthful answer often flows immediately. But when deception is involved, there's hesitation, a micro-pause while the brain scrambles to construct the right response. These pauses, though brief, are windows into the mind at work, shaping illusion instead of recalling memory. Consider the way she reacts when pressed further. Does she grow defensive too quickly? Does irritation flare as if your questioning is the real crime? Anger in this case becomes a shield. It is easier to accuse you of paranoia than to maintain a fabricated timeline. The detective in you must pay attention not just to what she says, but to the gaps, the stumbles, the contradictions. If on Monday she says she left her phone in the car, but on Wednesday she claims she was texting a friend during that same time, you've discovered a fracture. If she insists she was exhausted when she came home, yet later recalls watching a late-night movie, you've uncovered another. Truth is consistent because it has only one version. Lies require maintenance because they invent multiple versions. And with every new version, the probability of exposure multiplies. There is a concept in psychology called cognitive load, the mental effort required to maintain deception. The higher the load, the greater the likelihood of errors. That's why liars contradict themselves. They can't keep track of every thread they've spun. Eventually the threads tangle. But the danger lies in your willingness to ignore these tangles. Humans are wired for comfort. We want the stories of those we love to make sense because the alternative is painful. So when inconsistencies appear, we explain them away. She must have been tired. She must have misspoken. I must be overthinking. But every time you smooth over a contradiction, you become complicit in the illusion. Ask yourself, are you following a line or wandering a labyrinth? Is her story clear and steady, or does it shift like sand beneath your feet? Remember this, deception does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, in small changes, in subtle contradictions, in the dissonance between what was said yesterday and what is said today. Your task is not to accuse but to observe. To hold the narrative in your mind and notice whether it bends or holds firm. A detective does not rush to judgment. He listens. He compares. He remembers. He waits. And in waiting, the truth eventually exposes itself, not because it was forced but because lies cannot endure the weight of time. So listen carefully. Not just to the words but to the spaces between them. Not just to the story itself but to the ways it shifts when told again. In those subtle contradictions, clarity begins to emerge. And clarity, though often painful, is the doorway to truth. 5. The distance within intimacy. Intimacy is more than bodies, it's a connection of hearts. You can lie with someone, you can kiss them, you can wrap your arms around them, but if the soul is absent, if the heart is elsewhere, then closeness becomes an illusion. If her touch feels absent, her kisses rushed, her affection strangely mechanical, then presence has been replaced by performance. She is there in form but not in spirit. Have you ever held someone close, yet felt oceans of distance between you? That is the paradox of hidden betrayal. It's not always the absence of contact that wounds the most, it's the presence of contact that feels empty, hollow, foreign. It is love that has lost its depth but still wears the mask of routine. Anais Nin once wrote, "We can never truly touch another until we are honest with ourselves." Think about that. What happens when someone offers their touch but not their truth? What happens when the skin meets but the soul recoils? What you feel in that moment is not intimacy, it's the echo of it. There is a quality to true intimacy that cannot be faked. When love is real, a simple touch on the shoulder can feel like an entire embrace. A kiss can carry the weight of unspoken devotion. Presence is alive, electric, undeniable. But when betrayal has seeped into the relationship, even the most passionate act can feel lifeless, like a script rehearsed for appearance rather than authenticity. Perhaps you've noticed it in the way her eyes close during a kiss, but too quickly as if she's shutting something out rather than surrendering. Or in the way her hands rest on you, but without their old warmth, more a placement than a caress. Perhaps in the way her body lies next to yours in bed, yet angled slightly away as though her spirit is already elsewhere. Distance within intimacy is a quiet wound. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor at sunset. At first you might ignore it. You tell yourself she's tired, distracted, stressed. And sometimes that's true. But when the distance lingers, when the absence within her presence becomes a pattern, your heart knows. The truth is, bodies can go through the motions long after love has left. Humans are creatures of habit. She can still hug you, still kiss you, still say goodnight the way she always has. But beneath the ritual, something essential is missing. And your soul feels it even if your mind resists acknowledging it. Think of intimacy as music. When both partners are present, the melody is fluid, harmonious. But when one withdraws, when one plays only out of obligation, the song falters. The notes may still sound, but the rhythm no longer moves you. And sometimes, the silence between those notes says more than the music itself. Have you felt it? The way a kiss can sting not because of what it gives, but because of what it withholds? The way a hug can feel more like an act of closure than of connection? The way her "I love you" sounds the same, yet carries none of the resonance it once had? These are not small things. They are signals, subtle, painful signals, that presence has become performance. That the intimacy you share has been fractured by truths left unspoken. It is easy to dismiss these changes as paranoia, to silence your intuition in the name of peace. But remember this, your body recognizes emotional distance before your mind does. The ache in your chest when she kisses you without passion, the hollowness you feel when she lies beside you without reaching for you, these are not inventions. They are alarms. What is intimacy without honesty? What is touch without truth? A shell. A performance. A play acted out on the stage of the body, while the soul hides behind the curtain. And yet, this distance is what makes betrayal so cruel. Because betrayal does not always announce itself through absence. It sometimes hides in presence. She may still lie next to you, still whisper familiar words, still play the role of closeness. But beneath the surface she has already drifted. So I ask you, when you hold her, do you feel her or do you only touch her? When she looks at you, do her eyes rest in yours, or do they flicker elsewhere, carrying the weight of another memory? When she whispers love, do you believe the sound or do you feel the silence that lives underneath it? Because intimacy is not about bodies pressed together. It is about souls intertwining. And when betrayal enters the space, that intertwining unravels, leaving behind gestures that look like love but feel like absence. 6. The weight of the unspoken. Finally, observe her spirit. Words can be dressed, rehearsed, polished until they shine with convincing ease. But the spirit cannot wear disguises for long. Guilt is heavy, and though the tongue may try to mask it, the soul bends under its weight. If you watch closely, not just with your eyes but with your being, you will see it. You will feel it. Sometimes guilt makes itself known in ways that seem contradictory. She may grow overly defensive, quick to anger at the smallest question, as though your curiosity itself were a crime. Or she may shift the other way, becoming suddenly attentive, showering you with affection that feels forced, exaggerated, almost too much. And then there is the most haunting shift of all, distance. That quiet withdrawal, where her presence feels muted, her laughter rehearsed, her spirit unreachable even when she stands before you. Rumi once wrote, "What you seek is seeking you." Think about that. The truth you chase does not hide from you, it draws you nearer step by step, through hints, through signs, through the silent ache in your own chest. Your intuition is not your enemy. It is your guide. So ask yourself, is what you feel paranoia or intuition? There is a fine line between the two. Paranoia invents shadows where none exist. Intuition, however, senses the shadow long before it takes form. The difference lies in your stillness. When you are anxious, restless, desperate, you imagine things. But when you are quiet, calm, listening deeply, what you feel is real. Have you noticed how your body reacts when something is wrong? The tightening in your chest. The heaviness in your stomach. The way your thoughts return again and again to the same uneasy place. These are not accidents. They are signals. Your soul is whispering truths your mind is too afraid to name. The weight of the unspoken is not carried by words, it is carried in atmosphere. In the way her smile fades a fraction of a second too soon. In the way her voice trembles on words that should be effortless. In the way her laughter feels like a mask, beautiful but brittle. You can sense it because the soul does not lie even when the mouth does. But here lies the deeper question. Are you ready for the truth your soul already knows? Because often, it is not that we cannot see, it is that we refuse to see. We notice the signs. We hear the silences. We feel the distance. And yet, we cover it all with hope because truth is heavier than illusion. To acknowledge it means change, confrontation, loss. And so we delay. We silence our intuition in the name of comfort. But denial is its own kind of suffering. To live with a truth unspoken is to carry two weights, the weight of betrayal and the weight of pretending it does not exist. Which is heavier? Which lasts longer? Philosophers have said for centuries that truth is both wound and medicine. It cuts but it also heals. To see clearly may break your heart, but it will also free your spirit from the endless burden of doubt. And sometimes freedom is not in discovering something new, it is in accepting what you already knew all along. Look at her spirit. Does it shine with openness or does it flicker with concealment? Do her words align with her essence or do they feel like clothes too small for the body that wears them? Has she grown more alive beside you or more withdrawn, more burdened, more distracted? These are not small observations. They are the map of the unspoken. And so, the question turns inward, what do you choose? To continue seeking reassurance in words, or to trust the resonance of your own soul? To cling to the comfort of doubt, or to face the clarity of intuition? Because in the end, no matter how carefully words are arranged, no matter how perfectly a smile is performed, the truth is written in energy, in presence, in silence. And your spirit, quiet, steady, unflinching, has already read it. So again I ask you, is what you feel paranoia or is it intuition? And deeper still, are you ready for the truth your soul already knows? These 6 signs are not chains to bind you with suspicion, but mirrors to help you see reality more clearly. Because love without awareness is blindness, and trust without truth is an illusion. So I ask you, will you close your eyes and pretend not to see, or will you face the mirror and walk into the light of truth?